So I would drive down Pico and up Hauser to get to the other side of town. And if you remember a long time ago, so in Park La Brea, they were building a new area. It's now old already. But, and so I noticed that it took a very long time, you just saw nothing there. And you just saw a big hole, then all of a sudden, it seemed like it went up very quickly. So what was going on? The answer is that to build a foundation, you have to build a very strong foundation. Once you build a very strong foundation, so then the building can go up pretty quickly. But the foundation is very important. And I think that's very appropriate for our speaker. Rabbi Czapnick is a very unique person in many, many ways. But whether it's at Torah Semes or at JLE, the idea is he's giving people a foundation. Whether they're very young and building their foundation, or older and starting a new foundation. But the foundation is very, very important. And it takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, and a lot of caring, and a lot of love. And that's what Rabbi Czapnick is so unique in. And it's a very unique person who could do such a thing, to build a foundation, a spiritual foundation. So it's very appropriate that we have him speaking to us today how to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash and transform the world.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Summers, for the warm introduction. Honored to be here. Reminds me of there was some sort of conference in Toronto, and the speaker asked how many people are here from out of town, and none of the New Yorkers raised their hand. So here was someone saying he's going to the other side of town. This is the other side of town. No, just kidding. I know it's a sore point, but just kidding. All right, rebuilding the temple and transforming the world one day at a time. What are the 3 weeks? What are the temples? What are the Beis Hamikdash? So the 3 weeks are, as you probably all know, at different levels of mourning, and how we can get closer and closer to feeling the sense of loss of the temples in Yerushalayim, in Jerusalem. And the opposite of mourning, when we're mourning, the most intense is obviously the day of, and the 7 days, and then there's the 30 days, then there's a year, that's the Yartzeit. So it's reversed a little bit as we get closer and closer to this special day. Hopefully will be a happy day one day. So the Beis Hamikdash, the first temple was in Yerushalayim, was in Jerusalem, before Islam and Christianity were invented. So that's important historically, just important side note to be aware of, that the Beis Hamikdash was there before Christianity and before Islam came into being. I know everybody in the press, everyone says it's a holy site for all three religions. Wonderful, but we need to know that we were there first, and the Beis Hamikdash was there then. And the second temple later on, and the Gemara tells us what caused the destruction. And the first Beis Hamikdash was the 3 cardinal sins that some Jews were not being meticulous about: idol worship, sexual immorality, and murder. And the second one was sinas chinam, unwarranted hatred. How is unwarranted hatred possible? Unwarranted hatred. Guy walks in, never met him before. Ooh, I don't like him. I hate him. It's not logical. The words don't make sense. What does unwanted hatred mean? How could that work? Well, number one would be stereotypes. The person is Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Russian, Israeli, Chassid, Litvak. You name the group that you're not part of, and we judge by the look, by the sense, and I am going to acknowledge my own fault in this area, we had an event at the Jewish Learning Exchange, and the person walked in, and he was dressed, I don't know, just not put together. And I said, okay. He ended up being the speaker that I hadn't met. And he was quite brilliant and eloquent. And it was thing, you know, I'm glad I didn't ask him to leave, but the whole idea, the concept of that we judge people by externals, and that's a bad thing, and we have stereotypes. And when it comes to Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, we need to not be so judgmental, and we need to focus on the essence of who the person is. And then there's another aspect of it, that sometimes we feel we're very right, the other person is wrong, and that's why I don't like them. But you know what? The issue 99.9 times of the time is not as important as we're making it. The issue is not as important as we're making it. I was once counseling a couple and they had a major disagreement about something. And I said to them, I hear the issue. It's a real issue. But I'd like you to realize, can you realize that the relationship you have is greater than this issue? I'm not belittling the issue, it's a real issue, it has to be dealt with. But can you understand that the issue is greater than this? The woman got it faster than the man did, but the point is an important idea. If we understand that the relationship is more important with our fellow Jew than the issue that we're disagreeing with, that's a very, very important idea. Didn't bring it. There's a wonderful article by Yocheved Riegler in one of her books, and I'm just going to share it by heart from memory. Basically, there was a friend of hers who was having a birthday, and what the woman requested when people were coming to her birthday party, I want you to pick a Jew you don't like, and you dress up like that Jew. And you present their case to the group. And then I want you to find the Jewish element within that person. Am I being clear, by the way? This means yes, this means no. Yes, we're good? So this one came in as a stone-throwing Haredi Shabbos person. This one came in as someone who wanted to break the blockade of Gaza and support the Palestinians. And this one came in as this, and this one came in as that. And each one had to present their case and find the Jewish value in it. And it was very, very revealing, because each one was able to see, I may not agree with that approach, and the other approach may actually even be wrong, but they're fighting for Shabbos. Do I care about Shabbos that much? And et cetera, different examples of all of the above. And each of the people were transformed by putting themselves a little bit in the other person's place. So this is a very powerful idea. We get upset about things, and maybe even rightfully so, but is it worth breaking the relationship? Be it with a family member, be it with a fellow congregant, be it with a fellow member of the community, a teacher, a student, a principal, a parent, etc. You fill in the blank. And the vast majority of the times, the issues are not worth it. They're just not. Get beyond the issue, and you'll see there's another part of the person. Famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Havidonas kol ha'adam l'kav zchus. Translation, anybody? You have to turn up the volume. As done, have they done as kol ha'adam? How does it usually translated? Judge every person to the merit. So Asema says, as kol ha'adam, the entirety of the person. It's going on the individual. Find not just the point of contention, find the greater part of the person, not just that one issue that you have with them. So how do you fight unwarranted hatred? And obviously we see that the three cardinal sins seem to be less than unwarranted hatred. The three cardinal sins, basically, this was rebuilt a few hundred years later. And one of the answers given by, I think, one of the Hasidic masters is because it's not about the cause, it's about the root. We can't have a second Beis Hamikdash if there's unwarranted hatred. So when we get past that, then that lays the foundation for it. And the foundation is unwarranted love. Separating ourselves between the soul and externals, philosophies, and action. There was a man who was very opposed to Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld was a very staunch advocate for the religious Jewish community in Israel. And there was a man who was staunchly against him. And he got up to speak, and he gave a fire and brimstone lecture and said that Sonnenfeld. And one of the non-religious guys got up and said, "Hey, don't talk badly about him." Says, "Why not? He saved your life." He saved my life. How did he save my life? Because a few months ago you were deathly ill and you were in a hospital and they gave up on you, and he got you into Shaarei Tzedek. The man didn't know it, but Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld got him transferred and saved his life. He was a staunch enemy of the religious and Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Rabbi Chaim Sonnenfeld took care of him anyway. He was able to separate between the externals and the philosophy and what I have to do. I might not love what he represents, but he's a fellow Jew. Powerful idea. And if we need shock therapy, Hitler or Arab terrorists, they don't distinguish what kind of Jew you are. You're Jewish, you're done. So, shouldn't we have a similar attitude in the positive? There was a Rebbe who met a quite overweight Jew, and he went over to him and hugged him and said, there's a lot of Jew to love. He didn't judge him and wasn't, God forbid, repulsed. He said, I have to love a Jew, and now here there's a Jew that there's a lot of to love. How do you develop ahava? It comes from the root word of hav. It's okay.
This is Rabbi Czapnick. What you doing? What you doing? You're just smiling.
Okay, everyone, if you can mute yourselves, please.
Remember Rabbi Czapnick?
I guess they do.
Okay, thank you. The word ahava is related to the word hav, which means to give. That's how you develop love, by giving. The advertisements say, I love what Toyota does for me. I love my Toyota. Okay? You love steak? Oh, that's California. You love vegetables? Okay? You don't love them. If you love them, you don't fry them and you don't eat them. Things you love, you don't fry and eat. You love yourself and you're enjoying that. Great. But to develop love, you have to give. And that's why the Jewish notion of love at first sight is not a correct notion. There's no such thing as love. You love yourself at first sight. You only really love when you're giving. And that's how you develop a havas chinam, unwarranted love, to give to a fellow Jew. So some tough questions that we need to ask ourselves. Can I give when I'm not in the mood? Can I give even when I'm in need of something? Can I give when I'm running on empty? Can I give when the other person appears beneath us? Can I give even if I'm jealous of that person? Can I even give someone that you're angry with? These are not easy questions. And the questions are easy, the answers are tough. It's interesting, the halacha is that if a person needs help unloading an animal, and another person needs help loading an animal, you're supposed to help the unloading first. Why? Anyone know? Sorry? Tzar Balachayim, because you're trying to leave the stress the animal has with this overloaded thing. So when you have two choices, I'm going to load some. I only can do one. This one's loading, this one's unloading. You should help to unload. However, there's an exception to this halacha. The exception is if the one who's loading is your enemy, better do that one first. What do you mean? What about Tzar Balachayim? No, you need to develop a relationship with this person who you hate. This fellow Jew you hate, you need to work on yourself, and that's more important than the other one. Can you give when you figure out what they need or want, even if it's not what you need or you want? That person wants X, Y, and Z. You don't care about X, Y, and Z. I should give them that? Yeah. There's a great Rabbi who said, I learned how to love a fellow Jew from two non-Jewish drunks. They were sitting and sharing drinks. Say, hey buddy, give me the glass. Says, you're my buddy? Yeah, sure you're buddy. We drink together. Says, if I'm your buddy, what do I need? How am I supposed to know? Just pass the glass. If you can figure out what somebody else needs, and again, it may be different than what you need, or you think is important, but you try to figure that out and give it to them, that's very special. I think it was Rabbi Rabbi, I'm not sure. He was walking on the street and there was a little Jewish girl crying, and he walked over and said, what's wrong? And he says, my friend said my dress isn't nice, they don't like my dress. And he said, well, tell them that Rav Abramsky said that, what's your name, Leah? That your name is nice and your dress is nice. And she skipped away happily. And if whoever it was, I think it may have been Rabbi Abramsky, he wasn't a Priwunei Rebbe, so it's not something that he was natural to do with little kids. So they asked him, Rebbe, like, why are you spending time in the middle of learning here and you're going to go to the girl? He says, we're here to emulate Hashem. We want Hashem to wipe away our tears, so it's our job to wipe away somebody else's tears. So her dress became his issue to help her feel better about herself. Now the famous story of Hachnasas Orchim that we have in the Torah is Avrohom Avinu. He had his bris milah, it's 3 days later, and he's upset. Hashem doesn't want him to have guests. Hashem takes the sun out, makes it boiling hot. And Avrohom is upset that there's no guest. So what does Hashem do? He sends the angels, and you probably know the rest of the story. The question is, why is Avrohom upset? What's to be upset about? There's nobody there, there's no guest. There's no mitzvah to have a chasas orchim if there's no guest. I'm not going to host anybody if nobody's asking me or I can't find anybody to host. I don't know if I'm expressing it strongly enough. The mitzvah is, you have an opportunity to do a chasas orchim, you do it, great. If you don't have the opportunity, then what is he upset about? The sun is out, no one's traveling. Okay. So why do we do mitzvahs? So, one reason is because Hashem said. It's a good reason. Another reason is to develop and strengthen our relationship with Hashem. Also a good reason. But then there's a third level, to develop midas, to develop character, and to develop ourselves to be a holy and elevated and Baal Midos, a master of character traits. What do we say in Shemoneh Esrei? We say we want Torah's Chayim, a Torah of life. Can anyone fill in the next word? Va'ahavas Chesed. It doesn't say Torah's Chayim, a Torah of life and Chesed. The goal is to be a lover of loving kindness. Which means that's what Avrohom was. And there's a halachic example of this. All things being the same, we're not talking about a person who has a special need at this point. I have $100, let's say, to give to tzedakah, and I have a choice. I give the first poor person $100, and give everybody else after that nothing, or give everybody $1. So all things being equal, assuming the needs are equal, you're better giving one person $1, 100 people $1. Why? Because you're flexing the muscle of chesed. You're giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. And that's going to develop the muscle to be able to give more and more and more. So the answer about Avrohom Avinu is he was on the level not of just someone who did chesed. He was ahavas chesed. He loved doing kindness. And when he couldn't, it pained him. Was he required to do a chesed? No, there was nobody there to do a chesed too. It's not relevant. But he developed himself to be in a position of ahavas chesed. That's what Hashem wants. And there's a very powerful Rabbeinu Yoina. The Mishnah Pirkei Avos is a very curious one. The Mishnah says the following statement: Arba midas ba'adam. There are 4 different character traits. Ha'aymer, one who says shali shali, what is mine, ushalcha shalach, what is yours is yours. Zu midah beinanis. That's, if you're curious, that's in Perek Hey Mishnah Yud Gimel. That's an in-between one. V'yesh, I remember zu midah sedaim. They also say that that's a very terrible. That's the character trait of sedaim. I'll go through the other ones quickly just to go, then we'll focus back in the beginning one. Shali shalach, what is mine is yours, and what is yours is mine. That's basically communism, amal aretz. That's silly stuff. What is mine is yours, and what is yours is mine. No, that's an unlearned person. Shali shalach v'shalcha shalach. What is mine is yours, and what is yours is yours. That's a chassid. That's a pious person. And shalach shali v'shali shali. What is yours is mine, and what is mine is mine. That's a rasha. So let's go back to the first one, the first example. What is mine, and what is yours is yours. So there's an argument in the Mishnah, what character trait, how do you designate this person? Whatever's yours is yours. I'm not going to take it. Whatever's mine is mine. That's it. So the first interpretation says, that's an in-between. Not great, not terrible. What's yours is yours, mine is mine. But the second opinion says, what is mine, and what is yours is yours. That's Sedaim, Solomon and Gomorrah. That's like really bad news. So Rabbi says, how could this be? It sounds like two extremes. It's either okay or terrible. And then he takes it a step further. What does that mean? What is mine is mine, what is yours is yours. Does a person like that give tzedakah? Does he give charity? What is mine, what is yours is yours. Does he give charity? No. So how could that be? Beinani, he's okay. It's not a great mission to learn before an appeal, you know. So what does it mean? Says the Rabbeinu Yoina, no. Of course, if a person is not giving tzedakah, charity, he's bad news. That's for sure, Sedaim or worse. The Rabbeinu Yoina says that the Mishnah is talking about a person who gives. He gives charity. But his attitude is, what is mine, what is yours. But I'm afraid of Hashem or social pressure, I better give some tzedakah. That's the question. The person who's giving, but he has the attitude of what is mine, what is yours, but he's doing it not out of the development of himself, to develop within himself the midah, the character trait of being a giving person, of loving kindness. He's doing it because he feels compelled to. I don't have a choice. That's where the argument is. Is that midas beinis? Well, at least he's giving. It's not great, but he's giving something. Or is that sedaim? Really bad news. See the mashgiach. That's really midas sedaim. That's really a very bad character form. And this is an unbelievable thing. So the person, the Mishnah is not talking about someone who says, what is mine, yours is yours, hey, go get a job, don't ask me for charity. That's the Mishnah is not referring to that, because that person is already, he's off the charts. It's talking about the person who's giving, but the question is, what's the motivation? Is the motivation out of fear? Fear of, like I said, communal people will say, or when Hashem will say, I better give tzedakah because it saves from death. Or is that's midas beinis or sedaim? If you're giving because it's the right thing to do, and because Hashem wants you to, and because you're trying to develop to be a greater giving person, that's a different ballgame. Going through some of the things on our list here, 21 things that we can develop within ourselves. Doing acts of loving kindness, some anonymously. A story is told about Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz, the famed Rosh Hashiva of the Mir, who he gave shiur in a small room and everyone had to bring in chairs. And one day the students were bringing in chairs and he said, the first one who came in, fared, which is Yiddish for horse. Next one, fared, horse. Next one, fared, horse. I was wondering, like, Rabbi, why is everybody who's bringing in a chair, you're saying horse? He says, because if everyone's bringing in a chair for themselves, they're a horse. If you bring in a chair and you give it to somebody else, and someone else brings in a chair and gives it to somebody else, now you're a person. People don't think about it. I need a chair, so I get a chair. Somebody else also needs a chair. So don't just bring for yourself. Bring that chair for somebody else and let somebody else bring for them. Now all of a sudden you're a holy person. Or the man who came to see the Chavetz Chaim and saw him crying, saying Tehillim. And he saw tears were coming down his face. Chavetz Chaim said, I don't want to interrupt. It must be a family member. It says, no, not a family member. Or somebody close to a friend's child. No, it's nobody he knows. Nobody knows? Yeah, he's davening. He's praying for somebody. It's not about knowing them. It's a fellow Jew who needs prayers. So he took it seriously. Being nice about oil chaveroi, sharing somebody else's burden. It's not easy. Why isn't it easy to share somebody else's burden? Because a lot of time we're busy carrying our own burden. Can we take off somebody else's burden and have room for somebody else? They say a story where Rabbi Levine and his wife, there was a widow who was always home with the kids. It was hard for her. So he called her up and said, my wife and I have no privacy in our home because the people coming and our kids, and we need to discuss something privately. Would you mind if we came to your house and you go out and get, do some errands or do whatever you'd like to do, and we'll just have a private discussion there? So Rabbi Levine and his wife babysat so she was able to go out. It was an excuse to get her out because he understood that she needs some time by herself and needs some time to be able to go out. The power of complimenting somebody. Very important idea. Compliments are free. Don't be cheap. Give a compliment. When you see something good, verbalize it. You'll be so surprised at how many faces you make feel better and how many times you'll make people lift them up because someone said a kind word to them. Number 4 is praying for somebody else, davening for other people, not just our own needs. Loaning things to others. Number 5, having a free loan society or supporting a free loan society. There was a group of people that were going up for a Shabbaton up into the Catskill Mountains, and their car got stuck in Erev Shabbos in Manhattan. Not a good place to get stuck in Erev Shabbos. And a guy drives by with his new Lexus he had just bought that week, and he sees the situation, and they were Jews he did not know. He said, take my car, take it up to the mountains with you. Here's my number, call me when you get back. And he took a taxi home, and they transferred all the food, and they brought it up there. It's a new car. Lexus. He was able to give it away to them, to loan it to them, to save the Shabbaton. It's greatness. Judging people favorably. One of my favorite stories about this woman who was waiting to get onto a plane, and she's hungry, and she sees a bag of cookies. She's eating her bag of cookies, and the guy sits down next to her, who's also eating from the bag of cookies. And he was like a little surprised. He didn't say anything, didn't ask. And he took the last one too. And she was wondering about it, didn't say anything until she got onto the plane, and opened up her bag and realized her bag of cookies was still in her bag. That was his bag. Be careful when you're judging. And to judge someone favorably means focusing not on their faults, but looking at their other virtues as well. And when you judge people and you focus on their positive, it makes you a more positive person. And of course, sarcasm is something that seems like it's a fun thing to say, but in fact is not a good thing to say or do. It's not judging favorably, and it's not making people feel good. Not listening to negative speech about others, obviously, individuals or groups, it's important. Again, like we talked about before, not letting stereotypes take over. Visiting the sick, and how to do that. There's a wonderful clip that somebody made about how not to do Bikur Chayim. I recommend, it's not for Tisha B'Av because it'll make you laugh, but I do recommend you looking it up. Rav Ginsburg, Rav Gansweig, Al-Basham Sr., was very impressed with two kids who davened in his shul, who walked on Shabbos for an hour and came up to him, to his room in the hospital, said, Rav Gansweig, good Shabbos, how you feeling? Good to see you, have a nice Shabbos. And they left. And he says, that's how you do Bikur Chaylim. Don't stay for a long time. Don't bother the person who's sick unless obviously he or she really wants the company. But keep it short and sweet and move on. Rav Mendel Kaplan was a very famous Rosh Hashiva of Philadelphia and Skokie, I think, as well. And he had a student that was in the hospital. And one of the other friends comes into the hospital with a beautiful new Tehillim. And he presents it to the person who's sick. He said, I brought you a very nice Tehillim. Thank you very much. A little while later, another friend, who was a Hasidic Bacher, came in with donuts. And Rav Kaplan said, the Chassid got it right. You bring someone who's sick, you bring him donuts. Tehillim? You say Tehillim, don't bring him a Tehillim. Very powerful, very good clarity. Giving financial support to someone to help them get married. Rising for the elderly, the wise, or for a parent. We forget there's a halakha about rising for a parent as well. That's proper derech eretz. Having proper respect is a beautiful thing. Not gossiping about others, regardless if it's true or not, is the key to successful prayer. What does prayer have to do with speaking ill about others? A lot. Because this is the vessel we use for prayer. And if we muddy it up with speaking badly about others, our prayer is not as clean as it could be. Making peace, extending oneself to another, even if you think you're right. And this is 3 levels here. Right, obligation, and kindness. I'm right. What do I need to apologize for? Why do I need to make peace? Or, okay, if you make me do it, I'll do it. But what is the kind thing to do? Beautiful story that I think they had on the Chavetz Heritage Foundation video a few years ago. Was about a man who was going to a wedding hall, or it was a tzedakah event, and there was a parking lot to go to this hall, and this man was driving behind the car, and the car in front of him had stopped before entering the parking space, and someone was leaning into the car and schmoozing. So the car behind, we'll say the first car was car A, car B, honks the horn a little bit to see if they want to go in, and they were busy schmoozing and they ignored him. So car B passes car A, goes into the lot, and parks and goes inside. 20 minutes later, the people in car A go over to car B. You took the last spot in the parking lot, and we wanted that spot. Sorry, I honked. It didn't look like you were going in. They were very upset. Okay. So it's before Yom Kippur, and Mr. B thinks, who did I get upset? Who did I upset this year? And he thinks about the story. Now, let's be honest. Was A right? Not at all. They hadn't gone into the parking lot. He did honk them to see if they wanted to go in. They heard him, they didn't hear him, whatever. He went in, he didn't take their spot. It wasn't reserved for A. He called them anyway. And he said, it's before Yom Kippur, and I know you were upset at me that I took the parking spot, and I want to ask forgiveness. And they said, wow, that was so nice of you. Thank you so much. We forgive you, we forgive you. X amount of time later, someone went over to A and said, we have a shidduch for your son, the daughter of B. We have a match. Said, daughter of B, B was a real mensch. He made a mistake and he apologized to us. And they made the shidduch. They made the match. And B said, had I not called, the match would not have happened. And again, it doesn't make a difference whether B was right or A was right. And in this case, really B, I think, was right. Beautiful story. Including someone who's excluded from the group. That could be someone sitting at a kiddush by himself. It could be somebody who's a little different than the group. It could be many, many opportunities to look for somebody who's being excluded, to include them. Greeting everybody with a happy countenance. Giving them a smile. And being the first to greet them. Holocaust story about a rabbi who would go for walks with his daughter, and he would see this non-Jewish farmer, and he would say, "Good morning, Herr Müller." And the farmer would respond as well. Fast forward a few years later, Herr Müller became a commander in a concentration camp. And the rabbi came and looked at him and said, "Good morning, Herr Müller." The commander says, "Where's your daughter?" She wasn't there anymore. But he remembered Herr Müller's the greetings he got, and he sent him to life. Trying to help somebody find the shidduch, a marriage partner. Cheering somebody up. Anything we can do to make somebody else happy. During the Holocaust, there was a man who was rummaging through the garbage looking for potato peels or anything to eat. And a fellow Jew walked by and said, "What are you looking for?" I said, "I'm looking for something to eat." I said, "I wish I had something. I don't have anything. Give me something." And he walked over to him and says, "I can give you a hug and tell you that I love you." A fellow Jew he didn't know. "I can give you a hug and tell you that I love you." And the man said that that hug carried him through life, helped him survive the Holocaust, and carried him throughout life. And any time that this fellow Jew found something to give him, he was also starving, and he also could have used the hug, but he was able to get out of himself to give somebody else something. That's big. Studying Torah with someone less knowledgeable than yourself. "But I'm busy, I have things I want to learn." You'll be better off studying with somebody less than you and worrying about your own learning. How to give tzedakah, do it with a smile, S-M-I-L-E. S stands for smile. M is money. It's helpful to give money. Invite them into your home, let them use your restroom. Again, if a woman's home alone, I wouldn't advise that, because just for safety, but there should be opportunities where you can invite a person in instead of taking them just by the door. Invite them in, give them a drink, and listen to their story. It's not going to take long, 2-3 minutes at max, but you're showing them that you care them about as a person, and you're not just trying to get rid of your obligation. And yes, offer them to use the restroom. Many people offer them water, which is great, but a lot of times after they've been to a bunch of houses and they've had a lot of water, they could use a restroom as well. And listen to the story and offer them something to eat. Being the first one to say hello. Trying to help someone get a job, saving somebody else money. Or maybe you know about a sale, an item that's on sale. Let somebody else know. Got a great item there. Check it out. Calling and visiting someone who's lonely. It's a lot of lonely people. It's easy to go, much easier to visit a friend, you schmooze and you have plenty of time. What about someone who doesn't have anybody to schmooze with? And you call them. I should include in judging people favorably is not responding to an insult and being mevater, giving in. Those are big things. Not easy to be mevater. There was a couple that was visiting their sister-in-law who she and her husband hadn't had children for 10 years. And when the wife and husband came home, they said, "You think that maybe sister-in-law's pregnant?" I don't know. She didn't look like she was feeling great. I wonder maybe she's pregnant. I don't know. The family didn't tell me anything. She says, "Well, if she is pregnant, she's going to have the baby the week of April 3rd. Okay. Why do you say that? Huh? Sure enough, the week of April 3rd, that childless couple had a baby, little baby boy. And the husband remembered their mom and said, "Why in the world did you make that prediction? How did you know that?" He says, "I'll tell you. Our child was in a play group, and for whatever reason we decided to switch, and the Mora, the one in charge of the first play group, said, you said you're going to be here for the year, and the year ends September." Says, "The year doesn't end September, man. It ends at the end of June." "No, September, you have to pay me for the full year." She asked other Moras, other playgroup women, and they said, "No, year ends like at the end of the calendar year, the school year, end of June." She went to a Rav, to a rabbi, a halachic authority. "Am I required to pay her for the 2 months of July and August?" Says, "No, you're not." Her father calls her up and says, "I heard this whole story, and I'm not here to tell you how to spend your money, but your sister-in-law didn't have a baby for 10 years. I'd like to suggest that you pay her for the 2 months anyway. You don't have to, and again, like I said, it's your money, but that's my suggestion." And the woman thought about it, and she said, "I gave her the first extra check on July 3rd. 9 months later was April 3rd. So I figured, in the merit of me giving in for that, that's when she had the baby," and she did. Ramosha Kabrina says a very powerful statement. He says, "A day we don't do an act of loving kindness is considered like we did not live." Think about it. I ran around like a crazy person. I davened, I learned, I went shopping, I did this, I fixed this errand, I did that errand, but I didn't do an act of loving kindness. Any one of the 21 or any other kindnesses you can come up with. Rav Moshe Kabina says, it's like you didn't live that day. That's pretty strong. And I would suggest that people keep a chart. Did I do a loving kindness today? What loving kindness did I do? Just for yourself. Nothing to put on Facebook or anything, just for yourself. What loving kindness did I do? The key is to think, look for opportunities. The opportunities are endless. Feel and take the initiative and make it a priority. Love acts of loving kindness. And I'll conclude with a very sweet story that just happened last week, and I know the people involved. There's a friend of the family whose son-in-law had a heart transplant last week. Avrohom, still not out of the woods. And the wife was there, and she gets a call from the nurse's station that there's a woman waiting for you downstairs. And she goes down to the lobby, and there's a religious woman. This hospital was in Manhattan. Religious woman from Florida there. And she says, "I'm from Florida, and I came up for the day. Number one, to bring you something to eat," which was very appropriate because she was very starving. She was very hungry. And number two, to let you know that a year ago I had a heart transplant myself, and Baruch Hashem, I'm doing well, though this is the first time I'm on a plane since then. And I came to give you chizuk, to encourage you to see that there is life after the transplant, so your husband should have a refuah shlema, you should feel better. And I'm heading back to Florida tonight. It's a woman that she didn't know. Neither of them knew each other. But she heard that a woman was in the hospital taking care of her husband who had a transplant. She traveled from Florida to bring her some food and to give her chizuk, to give her strength. Mikam Yisrael, who's like the Jewish people. What a beautiful, beautiful act of kindness that only few people could do. And she came from Florida to New York to be able to do that. We want the Beis HaMikdash, we need the Beis HaMikdash, so much so. And we look at issues in the world, and we think there's a problem there that needs to be fixed, and that's a problem there, but the problem that we have to look at is what can I do better? And if we follow some of the ideas, hopefully, that we discussed, and implement them, and have a sense of feeling and strength, that I want to be ahavas chesed, I want to love kindness, and develop my spiritual muscles of thinking, caring, and looking for opportunities to help. Hopefully we'll merit that next year we'll be in Anshe Emes Yerushalayim.
Amen.
Kol tov.